Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
And guys, this is episode number 75.
Wow.
75?
75. We are 3/4 of the way to 100. Triple digits.
Oh, us.
On the way.
Yay.
So,
Jake's put up with this long, Val.
What's
What?
that?
Jake's put up with this long.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Mostly
I think
me.
it's a little bit easier because we've been like virtual, but whether you like it or not,
True.
Jake, episode 100, we're going to do in person with each other, even if we have to sit like a table over here and a table over here. You will have to endure us physically in person.
I'd like to say, episode 100 should be like close to 6 months from now. So I'm hoping that we should be able to do it live. But I have
You're
no
a
idea.
dreamer.
I have no idea with the current climate, global situation, whatever we want to call it. I have no idea.
I think we need to do it at Disneyland, I think is what needs to
Oh,
happen.
please.
I would love to. They did. Speaking of Disneyland, they did announce their next D23 Expo.
Yes,
but it's not
they
going to be
did.
until 2022, but September 9th through 11th, 2022. I sent
Nice.
a text to my wife with a picture of it saying we should go and start saving up now. She was sitting right next to me and has yet to respond. So I'm not sure what that means, but I don't think it's looking good for me.
This is the thing about D23. If you're not a member, at least become a member and subscribe to D23 because you get a lot of discounts just to being a member of the group. But that convention is one of the craziest conventions I've heard. I have some people that have worked it. I have people that have gone and done panels. I have yet to go yet because Sammy and I have wanted to go, but it was a little expensive. But also she has a crowd issue and it's way more crowded than people would think. And so, but she says the next time that she's ready to go. So if it's going to, cause they change it. It's not always in Anaheim.
Yeah. They alternate between Anaheim and Orlando, I think. Primarily.
Yeah. Well, there was also one in Chicago. Wasn't there one in Chicago? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
There may have been. I don't think they do it exclusively.
Oh, maybe that was Celebration. Never mind.
Yeah.
Maybe that was Celebration. But they also did one in Shanghai, and I was like, let's go to that one. But we missed that. So now that it's going to be in Anaheim again, I think we're going to try in 2022 as well.
Nice.
But it's a little crazy.
Rumors are the parks might open in California first week of November.
They're having some issues because like just opening downtown Disney the other day within 5 minutes yesterday, they're like, we're full. Sorry, go home.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's hard because that whole area is hurting. I mean, it's not just Disney employees. It's not just about opening the park for entertainment's sake. And this is not a Disneyland podcast. I don't know why we're talking. You got me started on Disneyland. And I'm just going to go. Go.
We have time. It's fine.
Yeah. But it's hurting the whole economy out there. And I think it's hard having them not open. And I think they've shown they have a model that works because Disney World has been open for a couple of months, going on 3 months. Yeah. And they haven't had, I haven't heard of any major outbreaks that have been attached to Disney World. And I mean, yes, obviously Florida is struggling with stuff, but Disney World, it doesn't seem to be tied to that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, crossing our fingers.
But like I said, we are not talking about Disneyland for today's episode.
No, we're like the opposite of Disneyland topics today. We're going to go down a darker rabbit hole.
Maybe we were in Mickey Mouse's dream just now.
that could be. I keep thinking we've got to be in somebody's bad dream this year.
I'm sorry. It's mine.
You're the one to blame. I see.
It's usually me.
It's usually you. We are talking about, speaking of dreams, we are talking about Inception. And we'll probably talk about other things. Christopher Nolan. Tracy's so excited. Like, Christopher Nolan is one of your favorites, right? We're up there. You like him?
Yes, his early stuff more so. But I like this movie a lot.
This is probably one of the more enjoyable ones of his that I've seen. I like The Prestige quite a bit. And of course, the Batman trilogy. It's hard for me to count the Batman trilogy as Christopher Nolan films because, yes, he directed them. And obviously, he's left his mark on the film. and on the franchise, but it's not the same kind of story that he tells in things like Inception and The Prestige and Interstellar.
No, I think that it's very Christopher Nolan, because if you look at the other Batman movies, you can definitely tell who directed what Batman movies. Characters may not originally be his, but I haven't seen the characters like those in the other movies. They're all very distinct. When you have, the Michael Keaton movies with Batman, which was it's the end of the day for me, Tim Burton, which we talked about on our other Disney podcast the other day. But like, those are very distinctly Tim Burton, even though that he's not he didn't create Batman, but you can tell. And so I think, I don't know, Christopher Nolan has this thing about his films that are very specifically colored. He has a definite coloration of each one of his films. And then the sound of his films are very specific to the film. And I think with his Batman series, though, that the sound and the soundtrack and the way that he contoured those films with his own style was very appealing to me. I liked it a lot. So it's going to be interesting to make that comparison, Jake, when the Batman movie comes out. Yes. And like put those, like maybe we should talk about those after that comes out to see the differences, because they're both very dark. They're darker stories. I mean, Batman's dark in general, but Inception is probably, other than the Batman trilogy, setting that aside, I think is one of my favorite films. I know you guys aren't a fan of Dunkirk. I am.
I like Dunkirk. I had a really bad experience in the theater with the sound mix, and that's been one of my issues with the last couple of his films.
Yeah.
I had that with Tenet. Yeah.
I had major sound issues with Dunkirk.
You know what, though?
Just didn't.
I saw Dunkirk in IMAX and didn't have any problem with it. And my friend Mike, who's in the morning show with me, said that he saw Tenet in the IMAX theater and did not have the same sound problem as I did. So why would he be mixing it so that it would be like that in a regular theater?
So when he is mixing it in the highest level fidelity sound that he can get on the best equipment. And he is always trying to push the theaters to upgrade their equipment to match the quality of his films. But the problem is that he muddies it and buries it, especially when it comes to key moments of dialogue.
Yes.
These last couple of films, which his stock has dropped with me, but Inception, I think, is one of his high points for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
I think is definitely one of his better films. And just to go back to Dunkirk real quick, it's not that I don't, or I'm not a fan of Dunkirk. It's just not a movie that you're going to sit down and watch over and over again. For me, it was good, and it was a good movie, and it was a good story, but it wasn't one that I was like, okay, let's watch it again. Like, hey, what should we do tonight? Let's have some fun. Let's watch Dunkirk. That seems like a fun,
See, I'm a weirdo. Out. That's fun for me, but I'm a weirdo.
Well, and that's okay. And I'm just saying, for me, like if I'm looking for a fun movie to put on, I get it. So,
see, for me, it was really hard for me to watch Inception again. When it came out, I was in a different place in my life than I am now. And Inception, I was just so blown away by the way this movie was filmed and the sequencing and the story. And I was just like, this is fantastic. But stepping outside of that, now that I have been really dealing with my mental health issues and going to therapy, and part of my issue is sleep and dreaming, this film is very hard for me to watch. And I didn't realize this before until I went to watch it a couple of months ago, because I'm sitting at home and I'm like, oh, I really liked that movie. And then I turned it on, and like 5 to 6 minutes in, I was like, I can't watch this movie. And then I did watch it again yesterday, but I had to like sandwich it with some fun things, because it really triggered me, that things that it hadn't done before. And I now I see it in a different light, and I'm wondering how I thought of, like, I used to think about it like this, and now I think about it like this, and neither of them are wrong, but it's just so intricate.
Wow.
my brain just keeps spinning, and it's so cool, this film.
Yeah.
So your brain is like the top.
Yes.
Assuming the top is still spinning, because it might not be spinning.
Which we need to get into.
Yeah, well, of course, we'll talk about the top. We'll talk about the top. Which, if you haven't seen Inception, you probably shouldn't be here for that part of the discussion. But or any of this
Any
episode,
of it,
come
really.
back, go watch the movie, come back. That's what we always tell people. Go. We've talked about being like a book club for movies. So, like any book club, you've got to read the book before you come to book club. Like, you got to watch the movie before you come to our show.
I know some people have mentioned, though, that they've watched or listened to our show for movies that they never thought they would watch before, but they got our feedback and then they went and watched them. So I'm not saying there's a bad way to do it, but if you want to join in on the conversation, maybe, watch it first, but it's up to you.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Tracy. It sounded like you were going to say something. Did you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about Inception. It's very different. I think, I don't know. There's a lot. I can't think of a movie out there that's like Inception. It's kind of its own thing. It's just very different. The story's very different. The style is incredible. The visuals are incredible. It's hard to think of a movie that even compares to what Inception is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He based it, and the funny thing is he based it off a James Bond movie. It was inspired by On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is his favorite Bond film.
Really?
That's why we have the whole episode at the end with the snow. That's a direct homage to Her Majesty's Secret Service.
I had no idea.
So he said that this is basically his James Bond film, although I think Tenet kind of is as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to think of it that way because it really is, if you peel away everything else, it really is like a James Bond film or like a spy movie because there's a lot of action sequences, there's a lot of intrigue, but then it's in typical Christopher Nolan fashion, it's wrapped up in a completely different package than what you would normally see a spy film as. It's just not straightforward, right? I mean, there's plenty of action sequences, but then you find it's all in somebody's head the whole time.
Right.
Yeah, like 7 people. I like it because you guys know how I feel about Quentin Tarantino. Like, I respect his filmmaking, but I usually am just not a fan of watching his films. And I feel like Christopher Nolan did. What I love about Tarantino's work here is that he pushed the envelope of what he thought an American audience could follow. And he pushed us and he pushed us and he challenged us, but actually in a format setting that I enjoy. Just because I'm not into the certain amount of violence and stuff that Tarantino does. I'm not a huge fan of that. But again, I respect the way he pushes his audience and his filmmaking techniques. And this film, it's very much like you guys say James Bond, but I say like Mission Impossible because there is such a crew of side characters that are so important to this team and how things happen. And, you're rooting for so many different people, but then at the same time, you're questioning every single one of them, including the main characters, which your brain just does not shut off the whole time you're watching this film.
Right. Well, and I like this one because it is a lot of Christopher Nolan's crazy scientific thoughts and ideas and theories and intellectualism, but yet told in a way that is still accessible for mainstream audiences. And I don't think he succeeded with that with Tenet. I don't think he explains the rules of the world of Tenet as well as he explains it in Inception. In Inception, we know that there's dreams. We know that what the totems do, the dreams within the dreams. We know how these rules work, so we can follow along with the story. And so, to me, this is the marriage of the entertainment factor plus his intellectual leanings.
Yeah, I love how much action it is, but like you said, Tracy, it's so intellectual. I feel like, like the MCU has the time heist and Inception has the mind heist. Like they go into people's minds and they steal. Like they are mind burglars, and it's so crazy to think about that. Okay, we are going to create this technology. We're going to put a team together. We're going to find some of the most important people in the world. And we are going to get into their thoughts and their brains, and we are going to steal what's most important to them. And it's like you said, a dream within a dream within a dream, which, like, as a regular human, like, those are the dreams we hate because you think you're awake and then you're not awake and then you think you're awake again and then you're not awake. It's so great.
So we have a comment from Facebook that I'm going to put up here real quick because I think we do need to talk about it at some point. But my favorite part, according to Rachel Robinson, is the soundtrack, which is the most streamed film score on Spotify, BT dubs.
Oh, okay.
By the way, for all of you that may not be hip to the lingo, I am, because I've got kids, so I know what BT dubs is all about.
I'm not on the Spotify, so that's cool. That's cool to know.
That's an interesting fact. I didn't know it was the most streamed, but Hans Zimmer did the soundtrack or did the score for the film. And of course, I love that a good film score is going to heighten the movie and make it better, right? And I think that Hans Zimmer does that with Inception. I think it's incredible. What do you guys think of the music?
Oh yeah, I mean Hans Zimmer. If you're not gonna have John Williams, you're gonna have Hans Zimmer, and he is very much a storyteller, but he never overplays the story, which is great because sometimes you'll have soundtracks that overwhelm you, and this is where I think why I like this movie out of all of his movies, other than the Batman films, because it is subtle, but it is constant. And so you are very much rushing with the music, which with an action film, with a suspense film, you should. But then it comes back when you need to have those moments of reflection in the film, which I think in Tenet, it was just a constant like hitting my head against the music. And I hated it. But Hans Zimmer, and he fights also for the way he wants his music to be heard. And so I'm sure this was more of a collaboration than it usually is with him and his, musicians and the people that does his scores. Hans Zimmer doesn't let you just do whatever you want with his sound.
Right. No. Was this the first example of Christopher Nolan's now famous blah noise?
I don't know. I would have to look
because
up.
Like the last 3 movies. Interstellar.
I got you, Jake. This is where I'm cool. I don't know about the BT dub, but this is what I can do for you.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan have worked on quite a few films together. Hans Zimmer also did. See, I've got it pulled up here. He's done a ton. Dark Knight. He did Dunkirk. Interstellar. He also did Sherlock with Robert Downey Jr. So he's and as Chantrice is pointing out on our comments right now, also did the score for The Lion King.
Oh, that's right. The Jon Favreau one.
Gladiator as well. Gladiator, which is
Gladiator,
Gladiator's a good one.
Fantastic. I love Gladiator for sure.
Let's pull up Noel's comment.
Yeah, I don't know, Noel. I don't know. He's asking, is this the correct spelling?
No, I wonder if it's in the shooting script.
I probably insert here. And it's like, all right, well, we know that's got to go in. So, yeah, the music is great. Obviously, Hans Zimmer, you really can't go wrong. He is right up there with John Williams. And I mean, he's just incredible. And it's fun when you see directors kind of build that relationship and you can tell like, okay, I'm not surprised to know Hans Zimmer did this because it's a Christopher Nolan film and they seem to tell the story together and they work really well together. It's like Tim Burton and Danny Elfman, right? I mean, they just go together like two peas in a pod.
Like chocolate and peanut butter.
Yes, which is way better than peas in a pod. Why do I keep using that?
You're trying to help you.
Yeah, that's it.
Let me help you.
That's what it is. Even in your comments, you're trying to be more healthy.
The practical effects from Rachel Robinson, who is, I don't know, we probably should have just had her be on the show with us. She's got a lot of great comments tonight. But speaking of the shooting script, we got to talk about Nolan's practical effects. How much of the effects in this were practical as opposed to computer generated?
a lot of this.
Just about everything was practical.
My favorite, and I think that there's a YouTube video on this because I remember looking it up a couple of years after the movie came out, and there was more stuff on YouTube. I watched the movie again, and when they have the van go off and into the water, I believe that is a studio effect still, but when they're in the van, but they do actually sink a van.
Yes.
But the water scene, they're obviously on a set in there, but they had some technical difficulties actually with the seat belts. If I'm getting this, because it's been a long time since I watched this YouTube video. But you have to practice those things as stunts, because when you put water with mechanics and then you're trying to shoot in this very small area, there were some spiky moments there.
Yeah.
And I love it when directors actually use practical effects over special effects.
Well, and like the avalanche in the level 3 Dream, when they're going against the base in the snow, a lot of that was model work, and they would collapse fake snow over the model that was up to scale, and just did in-camera effects to make it look bigger, a la what Lucas did with a lot of the Star Wars films.
Yeah.
They even built the revolving hallway, which I think is amazing.
Yes, that
like they
was really
built
cool.
that. And Gordon Joseph Levitt. Hi. Yeah. He did all of his fight scenes except for one spot, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. We'll just call him Robin. It's easier to remember. Sorry.
That was a good one. I like that.
I like the practical effects. I think it just adds a little bit extra weight, a little bit more realism to the film. And like, you can almost feel the difference. And I think we've come a long way with CGI, and CGI effects are the way of the future. And obviously there's budgetary concerns and constraints and things like that that lend themselves to CGI effects. But when you can do practical effects, it makes a big difference, and you can feel the difference.
Well, and I think in a movie like this, where you've got so many, CGI moments, like when you're in the brains inside the cities where they're expanding and things are happening, to have a mixture of those practical effects to still keep your audience grounded in what's going on, is what he really balanced that well with this film. Because, there are some movies that are just, I'm in awe of them. Like I love Doctor Strange, but sometimes it got to the point where it was a little too much for me on the effects, that I was like, okay, like I need to step out of this. And I think another one of those was the newest Spider-Man movie, where they have like 25 minutes of just these special effects, and I needed to step out.
Yes.
So I think what Christopher Nolan did with this film is it was a really good mixture of, okay, it's real, it's not real, it's real. And that was, I think, also a part of the movie, and what he was trying to, is it real right now, or is that not? Did they really do that? Did they not? It was just all of, he just had us questioning the entire time to everything.
Yeah. And I do think that adds to it for sure. Let's talk about the cast in this film, because I think it's one of the best casts probably within any film for the last 10, 15 years. I can't think of, you look at who you've got in there. You've got Leonardo DiCaprio, who obviously, he's all right. He's pretty good. He's done some stuff. You've got Robin, or Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And then, oh man, now I'm blanking on her name. What is her name?
You have Ellen Page.
Yes, Ellen Page. Yeah, I couldn't remember because it's such a weird name, Ellen Page.
Yeah, Ellen Page. What I love about what he does with his films is he'll always have like one or two people that
right,
and then he'll have a whole bunch of faces of people that but you're not sure, like you don't know their names, but you like them, and then they end up being bigger stars. Like Ellen Page at the time had been in a couple of things. Tom Hardy had been in a couple of things, and he's used Tom Hardy in other films. But there's a bunch of this back cast that you're just love, and then he throws Michael Caine in there, which is great. And Yeah, I think he just did such a great cast with this because in every different scene or dream, somebody would pop up and you're like, I love that guy. Who's that again?
Well, he's got to have Michael Caine. Michael Caine is like his good luck charm.
Yeah.
I don't know
But
what he's
Ellen
going to do.
Page, she blew me away.
She was
film.
great. This might be my favorite role of hers.
Yeah, what a great juxtaposition with, I think, Leo and her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, she plays very, very well opposite him and gives us a very different flavor than what he gives us in the film. I think Ellen Page is one of those, like, she's just quietly really, really good as an actress. Like, you kind of see her on film and like you just know you're always going to get a really good, solid performance out of her, and you don't necessarily always think of her top of your list for like an actress or for a role, but when she's there, she's really, really good. Like, I love what she's doing right now in Umbrella Academy and just all sorts of stuff that she's been in. She's just a solid, good actress.
Yeah, a little underappreciated.
Yeah.
Well, and he could have, like, at the time, like Charlize Theron was big at the time, you know, like there was all these big Hollywood actresses that he could have cast opposite of Leo to bring more money at the box office or whatever, you know, but I think it wouldn't have been the same having someone that was so dynamic. Like you said, Jake, she is this quiet brilliance, but she also looks very just passive. And so I think he did it on purpose where we look at her and we just tend to think, okay, this is going to be kind of a quiet person. There's not going to be a whole lot of power that comes from her. And then she basically saves him, right? You know, so it's this unexpected power that she brings to this role. And if you would have had somebody that you'd seen do that before, or that is a little more powerful, you know, in essence, I guess I can say on screen, then I don't think we would have felt the same about the characters or the story.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting because Leo was the only person that Nolan wanted. He wrote this in mind for him and said, that's the guy I want to go after. He approached Kate Winslet to play Maul originally, but she said she couldn't see herself in that role, so she turned it down. Which I would have a hard time seeing her as Maul. She's a tremendous actress, but
yeah, Marion, do you say it Cotillard? I don't ever say her last name right.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I'm terrible with French accents.
Cotillard. Yeah, it's French. I don't know. She is beautiful, and at the time, I hadn't seen her in much. Like, again, she was recognizable, but
she was in Amelie
in this role.
But I think that was about it.
Yeah, I don't know that I had seen that yet. She in this role is just haunting to me.
Yeah.
Her look, her accent, the way that she is so emotional and powerful at the same time. I don't think of Kate Winslet. I'm glad that she saw that wasn't for her, because I couldn't see anyone but Marion playing this role. I mean, it just haunts me. It gives me goosebumps. It's so haunting.
Yeah. So, Jake, I think this is an interesting point. When I was doing a little bit of research for the film, I had heard this mostly as this is like someone's opinion, but according to this article, Christopher Nolan described to Entertainment Weekly the roles of the Inception team are similar to the roles used in filmmaking. Cobb is the director, Arthur is the producer, Ariadne is the production designer, Eames is the actor, Saito is the studio, and Fisher is the audience. Yep. So I'd heard that before, but it's interesting to hear that come from Nolan, because he doesn't really talk about his films much.
No, he doesn't. We've all been on Matinee Heroes at some point or another, right? And I think, Tracy, I know you were on to talk about Inception with them.
I missed that episode, though, yeah.
What's that?
I wasn't able to make that episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was on the one with The Prestige, and Alan Cerny talks about this, that supposedly, you know, The Prestige is also about making films
from a
certain perspective and everything. So I would definitely recommend checking out our friends Matinee Heroes and checking out their episodes on Christopher Nolan in particular, The Prestige, where Alan Cerny talks about that. But okay, so Christopher Nolan is brilliant, a great storyteller. And I always have a hard time criticizing anybody who's obviously way more successful than I'm ever going to be as a film director.
That's what we're here to do.
Yes. But to me, I feel like this has been my struggle with Christopher Nolan as of late. Like with some of his earlier stuff, it was very creative, it was very quirky, but now it seems like he's established as being this really deep, weird storyteller. And so he's got this air about him of like his poop doesn't smell bad. And sometimes I feel like
arrogant.
What's that?
Tenet was arrogant.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah. Tenet came across to me as I'm going to do what I want to do and screw everybody else.
Yeah. And like The Prestige, when he talks about, or when they talk about it being about filmmaking, it's about, these two sides of one that's selling out for the show as a filmmaker and one who doesn't, and Nolan kind of struggling with those two sides of himself sometimes. And so to hear that Inception is all about making films and about him making films, like it just doesn't surprise me that all of his movies are actually really just about him.
I could see that. And it's interesting too, because he writes a lot with his brother, Jonah Nolan, and Jonah, he from all accounts is even more kind of in his own headspace than Christopher is.
Oh, interesting.
He's the showrunner for Westworld. And if you watch Westworld, the first season was really interesting and tight and concise. And then they just drifted. And now in season 3, it's a completely different show than season 1. Yeah. He did the Divergent, I think was the film with Johnny Depp, where he's uploading his consciousness. That was a Jonah Nolan as well. So I used to think Christopher like had the same ideas and big ideas and creative ideas that Jonah had, and those two working together came up with some really interesting stuff. But Christopher kept it accessible and entertaining, and I feel like the last couple of films he's lost that. I'm not a huge Interstellar fan either.
Yeah,
I enjoyed Interstellar.
And Rachel, we know that this is your favorite movie of all time in your comment. And we don't want you to feel like we're downing this movie, because it is a really good movie.
No,
but
this movie is fantastic.
What Christopher Nolan has done since then. I mean, and even with the whole Tenet thing and how long it took, I get that we are in this unprecedented time as far as movies are concerned and being released in theaters, and really as far as everything's concerned. And so I get it. But the fact that he would not let it go to digital, and it had to get a theatrical release, and
he fought even drive-ins.
Well, I mean, Black Widow's being pushed off again too, so I mean, we can.
Yeah, but that feels like it's more of a studio decision than it is. Like, I feel like with Tenet, it was more of a like Christopher Nolan. This is like, you can't release my art.
That is exactly it.
To digital streaming before it goes to the theater. Whereas I think Black Widow is more Disney's like, look, we are not making the money this year that we thought we were on anything, so we need to hold off and I don't know that either side is right. I'm not trying to pass judgment, but it's just it's been an interesting year for Christopher Nolan because Tenet, and I think that led a lot of people that went to go see Tenet to be a little disappointed, because it was like, when somebody's like, you can't see this on the small screen, you have to go see it on the big screen, and then you go see it, it is hard for anything to live up to those kind of expectations.
Right. Well, and he really held the Warner Brothers team their feet to the fire. They very much wanted to either postpone or go digital. They even tried to get him to release it for drive-in theaters, and he wouldn't even do that. He was insisting that this film had to be seen on the big screen. And as a result, the media started writing up this movie as the savior for the cinemas. This movie's going to come out, and all the movie theaters are going to make all this money, and this is going to be, everybody's coming back from COVID. And it just didn't work that way, because scientifically it just wasn't feasible.
Yeah.
But I do have some issues with him insisting on this being only released in theaters. I felt like that was not the right call.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one. I don't want to see movie theaters go away. I don't want everything to go straight to digital,
Right.
and that's the future of going to movies. But I think this year I mean, it's just so hard. This year is just so different. But
Everything's
I
off
want
the
movie theaters to
table.
be around. I love movie theaters.
I would have liked Mulan way more if it was in a theater, but that's a
Yeah.
different conversation because I have a lot of problems with that film. But I do think it was, and we did it on a screen in my backyard. Like we tried to make it bigger, but the sound was just, that movie was meant to be on a big screen. And so I get why Christopher Nolan would fight to have something like that, because if I would have watched that just on my TV, I think I would have been more lost than I was in the theater.
Yeah.
But it really, like, I want to go see it again now in the IMAX just to see if it's any different, because I feel like there's a good movie rolled under all of that freaking gummy sound that he put over his amazing actors. But Inception for me, there was some brilliant moments in Inception that were quiet moments. Of course, like we get to the ending of the film and what everybody thinks, but leading up to the ending, and when we get inside of his brain and we go to all of these different floors, and the part that really resonates with me is when you get to the basement, that you know, she's down there in the basement of his mind because he's tried to push her down and push her down and push her down. And I'm like, that's where it hits me as a person with mental health issues, because that's what we do.
It's so true.
We take the hurt and the love of our life and we push it down, and we don't want anybody to get down there. And the elevator even looks different when you get down there. And every time he's on screen in a dream with his wife, the coloring is so rich and so beautiful and so old Hollywood and so warm that you want him to be there, because every time he's outside of that place, the colors are so, you know,
get a lot of blue
and harsh. And and it's just, so then you get to this warm place, and I love those moments that he has with her, but at the same time they're the most toxic moments for him because they ruin him. And it's his constant fight with himself, like, can I let her go or do I go be with her? And I just, again, there's these, whether it's he's writing about freaking filmmaking or not, like this movie is so great. Like I would love to like be on a panel or watch a panel about like therapists that deal with mental illness, like really break this film down on how it is like a person's brain that has mental illness.
That would be fascinating.
I don't obviously that's not what he intended, but for me, I see that way more now than when I never saw that back in the day when it first came out. So
yeah, there was a pretty good article about Inception and psychology and the psychological take on it, but it got a little too clinical for me at times where I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. This is way smarter than I am.
Regular people words, please.
Right.
Yeah, that's the hard thing with reading some of that stuff. It's like, I don't know what they're talking about anymore. But
I'm sure it's smart.
But if you can remember like lines and phrases from it, then it like makes you sound really smart if you want to.
And I can go, you know, in this article in Psychology Today.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you take your glasses off and you say, Bach.
Yes.
These words like deep psychosis and no, I'm just kidding. But Leonardo DiCaprio, like for him to fight, for him to be in this role, I think was such a good role for Leo, because he at the time was trying to get away from, you know, the roles that he was getting, and he was pushing himself, I think sometimes a little too far of what I wanted to see him. And I thought this was such a great place for him. This role in this film was such a good place for him. And he did a great job.
I think this is probably my favorite film of his.
But yeah.
He's very good in this film, and I think it is probably one of my favorites as well, Tracy, of his roles. I don't know that I'm the biggest Leo fan in the world. I can recognize his talent, but this is probably one of his movies that I've seen that I really enjoy quite a bit. So think it was really well played.
It was
And
refreshing to see him just be an actor because he was trying to break out of all these roles. So he was doing like Blood Diamond, and he's got an accent in that film, and it's
Right.
just super,
mhm,
it's on over here, or and then he did Django, which is, I mean, amazing. But again, he's, he had to be like a character actor, whereas this, it's just really good writing. He is this character that I feel like he hadn't ever played before, and I like those other films. Don't get me wrong.
right,
Uh, but it was refreshing to see him not have to go so far, but really it seemed so simple and effortless, but I know it wasn't.
right.
Sometimes that's the hardest one, or the ones that look like, well,
Right.
this didn't seem like a hard one for him, but it it took a lot to make this believable, because this, like, pitch this film.
Oh,
Yeah,
It
yeah.
sounds like freaking hokey. It's a hokey pitch.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and
absolutely.
I think it's interesting too, because he always makes his actors like read it on the studio set in his office, and they can't take copies. So they only get like one shot at it, and then he'll send them like snippets that they have to memorize before they shoot. But he's
Oh, wow.
really super protective with his script. So I can only imagine reading that for the first time and going, wait, what? I'm supposed to do what?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, and then not wrapping up the end of a movie. That's usually like the biggest, like, studios don't like it when you leave the end of a movie or the end of a big TV series where you haven't wrapped it up in a big pretty bow. And Nolan, I mean, he pushed it all the way to the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's still people that are talking and have been probably for the last 10 years straight, like nonstop. I mean, seriously, one conversation going on about whether the top is spinning or it's not. And we don't ever, and I don't think Nolan has spoken. I don't think he has said.
He has not.
We don't know. We don't know.
It's interesting, in the shooting script, it was supposed to be a fade out, but in the final film, he just does a hard cut, and the music cuts out too, which I think is very interesting. And some people have theorized that that's like you waking up from a dream, so it's almost like he's waking up from it right at that moment. But he's never publicly talked about it, and I don't think he ever will.
Yeah,
Which I
yeah,
think
he's
is
not.
good.
He's not going to J.J. Abrams this and tell us what Finn was really going to say to Ray.
Dang.
Well, he'll tell you the backstory of everything in a comic book
Yeah,
or a novel or something.
or something. That's right. Oh, you want to know?
We won't explain that in the film.
Yeah, let's leave it out of the film. I mean, who just watches Star Wars movies and doesn't read everything about them? I mean, nobody. That is
Done.
definitely a conversation for another
Done.
time. I know. I think most of the people that go to Star Wars movies, like nobody. Okay, when something as mainstream as like a Batman movie or a Star Wars movie or a Marvel movie, you cannot make it so that people can't just come in and enjoy the movie, and they've got to go back and read back issues of whatever, or this novel or that. You need to find a way to include the audience. But anyway, again, that's a conversation for a totally different time, and I'm sorry.
Yeah. We should have that conversation though. Like,
I would love that. Yeah.
Because that's
so what's your guys' take on the top?
I would like to think that is his reality, and that's not, and that's real for him, because I want him to have that. But unfortunately, I don't think it's real. I think his life now is his job. And he does there. I don't think that he has those things that he wanted.
Do you think
with
he's
his kids and his dad? And I think that's all in a different pocket of his brain that he visits.
You don't think maybe he's so far down that he's stuck in that level now?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is I don't think that's real. I don't think his kids are real. I don't think that place is real. I think that's the place that he, again, pushed down, but not as far as his hurt, but that's the place that he would visit when he needed to have that, and maybe he's stuck there now. But yeah, I unfortunately I don't think it's his reality.
Yeah. I agree that I think everything presented in the film makes it seem like that's the case, that he's just so far down and that is his reality. And so that makes me think that it probably is all real and not the case that he's just pushed it all deep down. Because then that would be how I would mess with people if I was making a film like this. Like, I would point everything to that and then be like, nope, no, he's got they're at home and he's got the perfect happy ending and everything's fine. I don't know. I think everything points to it not being the case, personally.
I agree with that. I'm with Val. I would like it to be, but I don't think that it is. And but in a way, I think it's almost like he's so far down and he's going to be in that level for so long. He's almost going to have an eternity with his kids and with his family because he's not going to be able to come back up, which is that bad of a thing.
And then Joseph Gordon-Levitt's going to just find him one day sitting on a bench as an old man. And Tom Hardy's going to be like, go ahead. Go ahead. And
let's bump him. It'll be fine.
Yeah. No, not bump him.
Well, now they get up the levels.
Yeah.
You got to give him the bump.
I meant it was like the end of Endgame. He's going to go over. It's old man Cap sitting on the bench.
Oh,
he's going to pull the top out of his bag instead of his shield.
Sorry.
I feel like somebody needs to bump 2020. Like, the next time somebody sees me, just bump me as hard as you can, but like, don't touch me with your actual hands and have a mask on, but like, bump me really hard, because I feel like that's what we need.
Push me into some water.
We need a Christopher Nolan bump. Yep. Now that we're all thankful for the things that we used to have, and we're going to stop being jerks,
we've learned what we needed to learn.
Yep.
I don't think we all have learned. I don't think we all have learned.
No, unfortunately not.
750. I'm just going to say that and we'll walk away.
So Rachel has a question for us all. And Noel's already answered this in the comments, but I wanted to get your guys' take. She says, I'm pretty sure there was supposed to be a sequel to Inception. Do you think Tenet ended up being that sequel? I didn't think they were tied together at all. But
actually, I'm pretty sure that Tenet's going to have a prequel. So I don't think, and I haven't done enough research on this, but just from what I do know about Tenet, but about what I've read, is I don't think that Tenet is the sequel to Inception.
Yeah.
I don't know how those are pretty far apart, but I could see how you would take this technology and make it this technology for sure.
Right.
But
they're
I don't know that
they're kind of similar in theme and execution. They're almost kind of like brother films at that point, but I don't think that there's a direct correlation.
Yeah.
They have more in common than...
I think there are two movies in between that would get you from this, to this. But I think there would have been more, there would have been a little more going on in Tenet, because Inception actually had kind of a cooler outlook of what you could do with the world around you.
Right.
And so I would think that even though it's now more in reality in Tenet, that they would have utilized that a little bit more if it was. But I know that Tenet's going to have a prequel, which I'm excited about.
I hadn't heard that.
I want to know a little bit more about Robert Pattinson's character and about how they met and when that relationship happened. Because if you have seen Tenet, you understand how they kind of tell you at the very end how everything was kicked forward. And so I would like to understand it a little bit more. So I heard that there was going to be a prequel to the film, but again, it's 2020. It could all be lies.
Who knows? Yeah. So funny story though.
Tenet didn't do that great at the box office, so they probably won't do a prequel now. I'm just kidding. I don't know if they're going to factor that in at all.
Well, I read an interview with Robert Pattinson when he was promoting Tenet, and he got offered to audition for the Batman while filming Tenet. And he went up, he's like, how do I tell Christopher Nolan I need to take a day off of his film to go audition for this other film in a picture that he's already done, kind of, because he's done a Batman film. So he said that he went up to him and he lied. He said, "I've got a family emergency. I got to take off." And he said, Christopher Nolan looked at him and said, "You're auditioning for Batman, aren't you?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "How'd you know?" And he's like, "It's a small town. Word gets around. The auditions are happening. So you have my blessing. Go audition."
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see it. I really am.
But I think he's an interesting director too, because he almost always is like dressed up on his film sets. He'll be wearing like a dress shirt and a vest, and he said that it's because he has so much respect for cinema that he wants to be like dressed up for the job each day, which I think is interesting.
I think it sounds pretentious, but that's, you know.
Jake hates Christopher Nolan. He thinks he's a pretentious dick. Everybody tweet that.
Yeah. And
send your complaints to podcast.
He'd be like, "Who's Jake?" And then he'd move on with his very successful life and not even care.
No, I think I was having this conversation with my boyfriend last night, and we were talking about how in certain businesses you need to be a certain kind of confident to be really good at your job. And I think when it comes to directors and people in entertainment, there's a certain amount of confidence. But I do think that there are moments when people like Christopher Nolan or gosh, I was just talking about him, Django Unchained.
Oh, Quentin
Tarantino.
Tarantino. I think there's a point. Sorry, you guys, I'm so tired and I have a migraine like that I'm dealing with, but it's all foggy up there. Leo needs to get in there and kick whoever is out so that I can think. But I think there's moments where these two directors, and there are more, we could sit here all day and talk about it, where they can be pretentious to the point where sometimes they hurt their film. And that's why you need a really good editor to kind of help you out in the end. And I feel like if Tenet would have had an editor that Nolan would have listened to, I think that I wouldn't have felt like Tenet was so pretentious, because I do like the story, but there was some of the best acting I've ever seen from some of these actors in this film, but you would never know because the sound was so loud and hitting me in the face so much that if I was one of those actors, I would have been angry at Christopher Nolan, because Kenneth Branagh is like the best villain. This is one of
he was great.
Like the best. And luckily most of the scenes that he was in, there wasn't a lot of background sound. But I didn't get to know a lot of these characters until the end because I was just trying to get past the surface of sound. I was so angry, and I wasn't even in the film. I just paid for the film.
Yeah.
I just paid to go see it. So I do think that there is a bit of pretentiousness, is that a word, when you get into some of these directors and some of these films.
I'm very interested to see his next film, because is he going to continue down this path, or is he going to pull back and listen to what people are saying? Because pretty much universally the feedback has been the last couple of movies, the sound mix has been really rough. So does he continue to say, "I'm an artist and I'll do what I want"? Or
no, I think he's going to continue to tell movie theaters to get better sound systems so that the sound of his movies sound better.
That's true.
And maybe you should just, say this is, an IMAX theater movie. This is an IMAX experience. If I would have known that, I would have bought the tickets to the IMAX, and I would have gone and see it in the IMAX if I would have known, because I wasn't as bombarded in Dunkirk. When I go to see a war film, I just assume that there's going to be a lot of noise, and it kind of, I didn't have that big of a problem, except for you couldn't really hear Tom Hardy a lot, but he mumbles in most of his anyway, so I just thought it was him.
So Chantrice, in commenting on dressing the way he does, he says, "Dress for the job you want." Chantrice, that's good advice, except it did not work out for me when I showed up in a Starfleet uniform to my job. Did not work out.
I think that's a poor reflection on your job, not on you.
Perhaps. So, showing up your first day and saying, "Well, so you said dress for the job I want to be a Starfleet captain." And they said, "Well, we appreciate you stopping by. We'll let you know." I thought I was already hired, but it was a whole thing.
When they let me back into the studio, should I just wear this?
Perfect.
That's kind of creepy.
Well,
Yeah, I know.
that masks are required. All right,
The job I want, man.
let's give this film a grade. Let's start with you, Tracy.
I'm going to go A on this one. To me, this is Christopher Nolan's one of his best. This and The Prestige, to me, are his two best films. Right below that would be The Dark Knight. Right below that, Batman Begins, Memento, some of those others. Like I said earlier, I think this is his intellectualism meets populism. It's a heady mix of science fiction, but yet it's still accessible. It's still entertaining. It holds up really well. The effects hold up very, very well. There's no real dating or aging in that. The performances are great. The score is great. The editing is fantastic. The thought behind it is intriguing. This is a solid A for me.
All right. Val?
I give it a B plus. I think it's super creative. I think it definitely makes you think. I love visually, it's fantastic. It messes with my, I won't say the swear word, it messes with my stuff. And but there are some things about it that make it so that I can't watch it all the time. And you guys know that I only give A's to movies that I can watch over and over, or that supersede other films. I do think it was super creative. I do think it's one of his best. But for me, I could watch Dark Knight over this movie all the time. Like, if you told me which one of these movies do you want to watch right now, I would say Dark Knight every time. Not that I don't love Inception. I think it's fantastic. It pushes the boundaries. It's challenging. It's visually pleasing. The sound is phenomenal. But B plus for me.
Yeah, I think for me it's a solid B. I agree that it is more accessible than a lot of the other stuff that Nolan has done, and I think it's very entertaining. I think it's something that you can watch multiple times, but I don't know that I want to, and that's part of the problem. Like, you can watch and get something new out of it every time, but I think there's some stuff in the middle you've got to slog through to get there. I would say his two Batman films are better than this one. Batman Begins and Dark Knight. Dark Knight Rises,
yeah,
it just didn't do it for me, and I think there was a lot of reasons why Dark Knight Rises was the way it was, and
I don't feel like his heart was in it.
Yeah, and I just don't think, and I don't think all of the issues were his fault, but I do think Dark Knight is one of the most perfect superhero films ever made. And I agree, Val. I could probably sit down and watch that one over and over again as opposed to Inception. And I like The Prestige a lot, probably a little bit better than this one as well. But this is a really good movie still. And I mean, a B's not a bad grade. I'm not going to give it like a C or a D, but it's enjoyable. I think if somebody were like, show me a Christopher Nolan movie, I'd probably start with this one and The Prestige and say this is kind of what Christopher Nolan is about.
Right.
And then they can go from there. So, but we want to know what you guys think. If you have feedback for us for the show, you have suggestions for an episode you'd like to see, or you want to tell me how wrong I am for giving this movie a B instead of an A, Rachel, it's fine. You can
I got
send
your back, Rachel.
To podcast@moviesatmakeus.com. We'd love to hear from you. Next week, we are going to be talking about searching for Bobby Fischer. We're looking for him. Maybe we'll have found him next week. We'll let you know.
Did you print the flyers?
I posted them up, glued them up on the telephone poles.
Good.
So we'll see. I saw him on a milk carton. Maybe we'll find him. And then after that, we'll look for Dory and Nemo.
Wow.
Bravo, sir.
That wasn't that great. It was. I appreciate the laugh, though. That made me feel good.
That was a legit laugh. That was not just a courtesy laugh.
Well, I appreciate that. But you won't want to miss it. We will be back again next week for your comments and your input and your feedback. Thank you so much for watching. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit like on this video. Hit the notifications button so you know, it's a little bell. You'll know when we go live and you'll know when new episodes are up. And we really appreciate that. And thank you so much. And we won't see you at the movies.
Bye.